I imagine I'm not the only person intrigued by the concept of Slitterhead, but where some of you might have had a fleeting interest in the game, I decided to jump feet first into what turned out to be one of the strangest video game experiences I've had in a hot minute. As the title of this video suggests, I've yet to complete this game, and who knows, maybe I might give it another go in the future, but at the time of writing, I have no intention to do so. This video is not meant to take a dump on this game, but to provide a warning to those who are still interested in picking it up. Okay, warning might be too strong a word, but maybe more of a cautionary heads up as to what you might expect. Because if you strictly went off the trailers, like me, then you too might be surprised to find that the game's concept is way more enticing than the gameplay itself. The very first thing you may have seen regarding Slitterhead is this trailer touting the names Keiichiro Toyama and Akira Yamaoka as the creative director and music producer respectively. It teased us with a project that reunites these two heavyweights from the survival horror scene, and if you aren't familiar with these names, allow me to explain the significance of this pairing. You see, Toyama is the director of the first Silent Hill game, while Yamaoka served as the composer on said title. Seeing these two come together once again to create something completely new was an extremely exciting prospect, as it could potentially mark the birth of a new innovative franchise like Silent Hill in 1999. This idea was enough to bring eyes to the project. I know I was invested at this thought alone, and leading up to release, Slitterhead painted this picture of an action horror title set in the 1990s East Asia, where you, as the protagonist of the story, has the ability to possess the mind of any citizen on the streets of this fictional city, and use their bodies as a conduit to combat evil body-jacking monsters disguised as humans who seek to bring about the end of the world. While it did well to convey the setting and theme of the game, it didn't do much to give a sense of the actual gameplay loop, which is the reason why I've yet to finish this game and why I suggest you gain some sort of understanding of what this game really plays like. So if you haven't played the game by now, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you aren't a die-hard fan, but I just want to put a small spoiler warning here. Chances are, if you're prepared to click on a Slitterhead video, spoilers is not something you're really worried about. Plus, the clips you see here are mainly from the first 3 hours of the game, which is less than a quarter way through the game. So what does a typical loop of the game look like? Well, to do that, I will need to go over a core feature called rarities. As I mentioned before, you play as an entity capable of possessing human beings and temporarily endowing them with powers. While most common folk possess lesser and unremarkable abilities when possessed, once in a while you'll come across a rarity, which is a person usually on the verge of death, critically wounded, or in extreme danger. When you possess these rarities, they are able to tap into a dormant power that is much stronger than the common folk and become one of the main characters of the story, complete with their own branching side quests. Now that we know what a rarity is, let's get back to what the loop looks like. So, from the start screen, you are presented with a map of all known rarities you've discovered. From here, you will need to listen to all the dialogue they have to offer. And when I say listen, I use that term loosely because there is no recorded audio in these conversations. The best you get is an ooh or an ah every time a new line is spoken. So what I mean to say is, you have to read all the dialogue before you're allowed access to the mission screen. From here, you can select your next mission, or you can tab over to upgrade your rarity's power, ranging from damage increases to cooldown reductions to healing capability. When you're ready, you select a mission and choose 2 rarities who will carry it out. Depending on the mission, you might be required to use a specific rarity and one other character of your choice. Now, the game plays out in a level-based format, meaning you choose a mission, then you're dropped into a small piece of the map, like a housing complex, town market, or sometimes the city streets, which at a glance can seem quite large, but in fact has invisible barriers all around. The mission itself often entails one of 3 repetitive mission types. 1. A straightforward style mission that has you make it through the level, slowly uncovering a small part of the mystery as you go along, while breaking up the pacing with a few enemies now and then. 2. A stealth section that has you hopping between people to make it through the section undetected. 3. A chase sequence that once again has you hop between people to chase down a powerful enemy. Now these missions don't always follow any one of these formulas, sometimes they're slightly more varied or incorporate multiple elements in a single mission. But these 3 mission types are the most repeating and common. By the end of the mission, you'll get a piece of the story in the form of a cutscene, complete with oohs and ahs for dialogue, but if you're really lucky, you'll get a more important pre-rendered cutscene, which is simply on another level of quality, miles above anything else this game has to offer. They are incredibly detailed and vibrant, not to mention fully voice acted, which leads me to believe this is what the devs blew the budget on. After the cutscene, you're sent back to the rarity map, clear all the dialogue, spend the upgrade points, choose your next mission, rinse and repeat. Now that you have an idea of how this game progresses, please allow me to state my case. I'm about 10 to 11 hours into the game and I've arrived at a point where the game is telling me that I need to unlock a new rarity to progress the story. This is the second time it has told me to do that. The first being an instance where I had to rerun a level to find the hidden rarity within it. I had to do this mission 3 times, which is 2 times more than I would have liked. The first time was a natural progression through the level. The second time I brought the 2 characters I wanted to play, with the sole purpose of finding the hidden rarity, and came to realize that they couldn't access the area where the rarity was hidden. Which led me to the all-knowing Google, where I learned that I needed a specific rarity to access the secret area. This was the third and final run of the level. At this point I was already a bit miffed that I was forced to rerun this level multiple times. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm not against rerunning levels and grinding, but the gameplay has to be fun enough for you to ask me to do the same thing over and over. And to put it simply, this game is just not that fun. But more on that in a bit. For now, let's reel it back to the second instance of progression blocking. So, the game has asked me to unlock a new rarity to progress the story, so I can essentially finish the game. From what I've garnered, I believe I've unlocked all the core rarities, which is a bit confusing. So once again, after a bit of googling, it turned out that I had to find this old lady in a total of 6 locations. Long story. But that means rerunning multiple missions again, which at this point in time, it's not something I'm prepared to do. I've come to realize that I'm simply not having much fun with this game. I was at a point where I wanted to complete this game just to talk about it, but this second roadblock was enough to put that off completely. Especially when I have games like The Last of Us 2, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black and Doom The Dark Ages installed on my PC, games that I actually enjoy and want to play. In an era where so many forms of media are all vying for your time, it has become increasingly harder to tolerate the more mediocre experiences. As I grow older, I find that I have less time for things that I'm only partly enjoying, when there are so many more interesting experiences to choose from. 10 years ago, I may have forced myself to play this game to completion, but these days I find it easier to let go and simply play something that brings me more joy. One argument I've seen online is that this game's design harkens back to that of something from the PS2 games. Admittedly, I agree with that, but is there really space for that kind of thing anymore? These days, games are constantly being refined and innovated to a point where it's come down to a science of things that work and don't work with modern audiences. In a way, it ensures that the games we're getting is only improving year on year, but on the other hand, it can go so far that it tries to please everyone and loses its identity completely. What I'm saying is that years of experimentation has led the games industry to rely on safe bets, games that we know will work. So experimentation has decreased somewhat in the last few years, which means developers are less likely to take risks. Which brings us to Slitterhead, a game that tries to introduce something new and unique with its weird and unorthodox gameplay loop. As someone who is drawn to these new and fresh ideas, hence the infatuation I have with 7 out of 10 games, I find Slitterhead is unable to capitalize on that unique take. It might come down to the budget, which was clearly way too small for what they were going for, but it also fails to make an interesting gameplay loop. I feel the game could have redeemed itself if combat was good or fun to engage with. Instead, it feels clumsy and just something I was stumbling my way through. I'm not going to go into particulars about it, but it does feel dated and unrefined in a sense, which in a way is on brand for that PS2 inspired argument. The way I see it, if you are out to try something different from the norm, you need to really nail that aspect of the game that's going to set you apart. For Slitterhead, it was the ability to control anyone and have them fight monsters with their own unique powers. If they could nail this part of the game, then it becomes way easier to overlook and forgive all the game's other shortcomings, like the terrible stealth segments, meaningless pursuits, and lack of voice acting, to name a few. Slitterhead leaves a lot to be desired. When I started playing it, I figured given time, this game might grow on me. But the truth is, I just became more jaded as the game progressed. Look, I don't get joy out of trashing someone else's work, but at the same time, knowing where your shortcomings lie is the first step to correcting them. At the end of the day, I admire Slitterhead for trying something new and trying to set themselves apart from the rest of the industry. And while I feel they could have done a better job with the core gameplay loop, there are a few things that they've done rather well. For starters, the story is not half bad. In all honesty, I expected it to be the worst part of the package, but surprisingly it was the most intriguing part of the game. Secondly, Akira Yamaoka comes through once again with some weirdly appropriate music. It's nothing new from him, and at this point he's mastered that uncanny, energetic, almost dreamlike sound that he does so well. Just take a listen to this menu theme. It might sound whack on the first listen, but it grew on me. Thirdly, I gotta mention the cutscenes. The real ones, I mean. The fully voice acted pre-rendered cutscenes. These are the standout alongside the story. Every cutscene had me glued to the screen with its rich detail, vibrant color palette, and cinematic editing. If they were ever to turn this game into a full-length feature film, I'd be there day one. Lastly, the tone and visual style of it all. From the colorful and chaotic fictional city of Kowloon to the "to be continued" splash screen at the end of every chapter, this game wears its style on its sleeve, even if it does come at the cost of substance. Well, that's it for this one. It's a bit different from the norm. I know I didn't cover things like combat, enemy design, and the story, you know, the usual review type stuff. I thought I'd do another video in the future if I ever got around to finishing the game. I must be about 2 hours from rolling credits on this game, but damn, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Look, if this video does well, maybe I'll do it sooner rather than later. But that's gonna be it for now. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.